get your data back under control. 200 things you can do with Nextcloud. There we go. All right, welcome everyone. So let's start a little bit with me because, so at least you know who's standing here in front of you. My name is Jos Sportvliet. My dad was born on this farm. It's in the southwest of the Netherlands. It's on an island. It's all very rural and, maybe a little bit backwards. Don't tell anyone I said that. I didn't grow up here, but I come from a family of farmers. And, my dad is not. He became a salesman later on. I studied psychology. I did some Lean, Six Sigma business consulting stuff, but luckily I recovered. I became community manager for OpenSUSE. That was fun. Then I became community manager at OwnCloud, and now I joined the engineers when they left and started Nextcloud, and I, was the most communicative person, I suppose, so I became marketing. And that's still what I am today. I live in Berlin, where I bike if I get the chance to. I only do that with good weather, because I'm a good weather biker. And only to get from A to B. I don't think biking is a sport, it's just a practical thing. Again, I'm Dutch. I find this whole sports biking, not my thing. And I enjoy that accompany of my wife and dog. My wife would have been here, sadly, she's very sick, so she couldn't come. And very sad for me. So, what is the subject of this presentation? As I said, 200 awesome things you can do with Nextcloud. I'll first talk a little bit about the good of the cloud, the bad of the cloud, privacy in general, and also the point of I have nothing to hide, which is a common point that comes up when you're talking about privacy. I will then talk about Nextcloud, and then we get to the 200 things. Don't worry, the first part will be 10-15 minutes, and I will focus on the last part. If you have questions, please just interrupt me, just say so, it's no problem at all. And I have 30 minutes, I believe, so I'll try to stick to that. I'm not sure if I get to the end of it. This presentation was a little longer. It's okay. So, let's start with the awesomeness of the cloud. And I don't think I really need to tell anyone all the good stuff we get from the cloud. I was recently traveling to the US, and about a week in advance, Google Maps told me that, hey, I can download the map of the area of Los Angeles for you, so that you have offline routing capabilities. Now, that's, yes, you can say it's maybe a little scary, but it's also really what I needed, because I don't have internet there, and to be able to offline route where you're going to is awesome. And this is something the cloud does, right? If you lose your phone, if you have an Android phone or an iPhone, the only thing you do is you buy a new phone, you log in, your contacts, your apps, everything gets restored. It just takes a little time. You lose nothing, almost nothing. And you can work with people all over the world. You can have video calls while you're editing a document. I mean, this is genuinely increasing productivity in a pretty epic scale. And it's also connecting us to everyone. I mean, Facebook says it wants to connect everyone. That doesn't always lead to awesome results, but often it does. It's just great. Maybe you're not that interested in the cat pictures, but it's still nice to know where, ex-classmates are today, who got married to who, etc. We're humans, we like to connect, and the cloud it's one of the things it lets us do. I mean, these great services that have been built by the big boys, this is X-Cassidy picture that kind of depicts the different companies, but they have built a bunch of really amazing services that do all the things I just mentioned. And again, they're not always entirely accurate. I was recently listening music, and there was a switch between a death metal band to Simon and Garfunkel. I thought, if a human had picked that, they probably would have picked another order. But they generally speaking do pretty okay. So we have all these abilities, and we enjoy them every day, and it's all free. Well, kind of, or really extremely cheap. And aside from the occasional creepiness, also the fact that it's free should give us pause, and most of us have by now figured out that there's an issue with that, and that this isn't exactly free, which gets us, of course, to the less awesome property of the cloud. I mean, why is it free? Well, ask yourself these questions. Where is my data? Who has access? And what is it used for? Again, I don't think for many people here it's a surprise that the answers to this aren't entirely satisfactory and really great. and in some cases just downright scary for our society. Oof. So the question, where is it? Well, it's in the cloud. It's in this amorphous set of services somewhere out there that is managed by some big American companies. The comics are from xcassidy.com. If you don't know them, then you're missing something in your life. In my opinion, it's worth checking it out. xkcd.com. So our data is here. Yeah? And these guys, well, the guys on the right have access to it, the guys on the left are hosting it. That's kind of what it boils down to. So what is the issue with that? Well, largely speaking, the guys on the right are supposed to keep us safe. Sadly, there's some disagreement between all of them about what is safe and for whom, but let's table that for a second, and let's talk about the guys on the left first, what they do. So 2 years ago, Dropbox started to, already 3 years ago, Dropbox started to delete copyrighted content. Well, how do they know that you uploaded a video there? Well, they take a hash of files, and then they check all your files against a list of evil hashes, because those are copyrighted content, and they delete it. And of course, then after a while, they had to be a little clever, because you would just change the metadata of a file, the hash would be different, and then they had to actually start to look at the files, analyze them at least a little bit to see if the copyrighted content, and of course the list of hashes gets bigger and bigger. What's the problem with that? I don't know, it's a little annoying, but as long as it's just used for law enforcement, then, well, it simply depends on whether you like the law enforcement in your country, which I'm reasonably okay with here in Europe. If you're in China, it's kind of shitty, maybe, for some people. Okay, so last year, Google went, I think, a little bit further. They started deleting porn. Now you say, okay, well, you can have your problems with porn, and there are certainly a lot of places in the world that have pretty serious issues with porn. But the thing is, this was actually a business issue, because there were independent porn actors who make custom content for customers and sell that, and then that customer gets a link and can download the content. Except that Google was using pretty clever, probably machine learning-ish algorithms to detect porn, and therefore were just deleting this private property that was getting sold to those customers. Which I think is really, I mean, come on, this is business. You might not like it, but it's none of their business to interfere with that. I had a problem with that. I think that's really not fair. And I mean, let's go a little bit further. Last May 1st, Microsoft changed their rules around all their services, including Skype, to ban offensive language. I don't know how they intend to enforce this, but it's quite possible that at some point they're going to use an AI that listens in on all your conversations and bleeps out any nasty words you say. I don't know about you guys. I think it's none of their freaking business, right? And this is all just annoying and none of their business, but they're building an infrastructure that can, of course, be used by people who don't care about offensive language or porn, but care about political opinions they don't like. And the infrastructure is being built. They're making all of the pieces you need for that. And that's, of course, a bit of a problem if we want to have a happy, free society. So privacy is important. And as I said, there's a free society that we care about. I'm going to go a little faster here. But privacy is important beyond just like we have a democracy, and a democracy needs privacy. I mean, first of the problems is, you might think, you know, you don't have anything to hide, but reality is you have a lot to hide. There's a huge amount of laws that you are not aware of that is rarely used, but could be used against you. I mean, I have a bunch of US examples, sadly, that aren't super relevant here, but there is a law in Washington that you're not allowed to be smelly in public. Now, obviously, it's not that, you know, they have dogs sniffing around and checking whether somebody used too much deodorant or too little. What laws like this, and there are many similar ones in other countries too, by the way, the laws like this are being used by the police kind of at their discretion. What happens is you have a group of young people making noise on a Saturday night here in Brussels, you know, and the police wants to remove them because they got several complaints from people. What do? They just look at a random little law, like say don't litter or don't, you know, cross the street wrong, and they just use that to get them to move. And that's fine. It's quite okay that that happens. But now imagine that this surveillance state that I just described is checking everything you ever do, and you're an annoying local activist who wants to stop, the local government from bulldozing a park that you like a lot. Well, if they want to stop you, they can use one of these random laws. Just look in your history on your browser, on your phone, or anywhere else, if they would have access to it, and they can stop you from doing it. Now, this is a danger for democracy, simply because if you put all these complicated little laws together with the fact that if we really want, we can know everything of you, it becomes super easy for a repressive regime to abuse. And I mean, there is a wish to abuse this, or at least a pressure to do it pretty much everywhere. So there's an issue with that. And besides, I mean, even if you say, look, we've removed all these useless laws and we only block people from doing things that are legitimately illegal, I can tell you a few things that were legitimately illegal. This wasn't illegal at the time. Slavery and, yes, the concentration camps in Germany were legal according to the local laws of the country. These are criminals. The ones on the left are the founding fathers, and what Gandhi did was illegal. I mean, the people who are fighting slavery, they were the ones breaking the law. If we have perfect law enforcement, we are actually in deep shit. Because if you want to improve society, often you have to break the law. I mean, think about the environmental movement. I mean, yes, eco-terrorists, it's not always good. I don't support all of that. But if it wouldn't happen at all, if it was impossible because we have perfect law enforcement that will immediately see it and act, then it would completely stop. And I think we wouldn't make a lot of progress in a lot of areas. Think about all kinds of rights, from gay rights, discrimination. There are a lot of examples here. If we want to move forward as society, we can't have perfect law enforcement. You need a degree of civil disobedience that should be possible. And China is one of the places where they're trying to get perfect law enforcement. But in Europe, we would love that too, I'm sure. Most politicians love to be tough on crime. Well, some crime isn't bad, And as I said earlier, I'm a psychologist, and one of the things that I tend to think about is, of course, in this area. So let me ask here straight up, how many of you have visited a psychiatrist? So I see only one hand, and I'm pretty, by the way, I should put my hand in the air. I'm pretty sure that there are quite a few more than one person here, but you don't like to talk about it, certainly not in a group of people that you don't know at all. So why is that? Well, it's because we like to portray a certain image of ourselves to other people. Now, that's why your Facebook stream is not exactly an accurate representation of who you are. You put pictures on there from a good party you had, not really of the morning after, because that's just not nice. Why? You want to create a certain image of yourself. You do this all day long. Your first date, you're not going to tell the bad stuff. You only tell the good stuff. Right? This is normal. This is healthy. But if you did, this only works because of privacy. If I could look up from each of you who went to a psychiatrist, you probably wouldn't want to go to a psychiatrist anymore, because then people would be able to know that. You'll change your behavior if you don't have privacy. And that's a problem. Now, if we want to build a healthy, normal society, we need privacy. It changes you as a human being and how you act. Even if it's not about being illegal, there's nothing wrong going to a psychiatrist. But still, you would probably try not to do it, which wouldn't be good for the health care and mental health in our society. Yeah? Just a little example, but I think it's relevant. And the point that you also shouldn't forget behind all of this is that privacy for all of us could be eradicated relatively simple by government. But criminals will still have privacy. I mean, after all, they have something to hide, and they usually have money, and therefore resources, and they don't care about the law. So if you make encrypted chat illegal, you guys stop using it, but the criminals will still use encrypted chat. It's not going to stop them, right? I mean, drug lords will still send encrypted messages. Terrorists will still use encrypted messages. I mean, all these attempts by politicians to decrease our privacy, to increase surveillance, to remove encryption, it has nothing to do with terrorism, because it doesn't stop terrorists. They use encrypted applications, even if you make it illegal. They're not going to use encrypted apps with a backdoor. They have something to hide. You are going to use encrypted apps with a backdoor. They won't. So there's another problem here. I mean, none of this will actually make us safe. Right. So now what? Well, we need a solution for this that is decentralized. All right, so it's going to be about privacy today, guys. I'll get to the answer, however, not much deep into it, so sorry for that. So we need a decentralized solution that doesn't put all the power, all the control in a single place, because that is a big part of the problem right now. Yeah, if you are a criminal or a government or someone who wants to control people and control data, right now there are 6 companies where you need to knock on the door. And these 6 companies operate globally. Now we all know that the US government can force companies in the US, like Microsoft, to hand over data of people in another country, another jurisdiction that is in that other country, another jurisdiction, hand it over to US law enforcement. We know that because there has been a lawsuit about it and Microsoft lost it. Actually, they stopped it. Yeah, there was data in Ireland from European people, and a New York judge forced Microsoft to hand it over to law enforcement, and it happened. So this is a done deal. But Microsoft is also active in China. And I mean, they have to follow Chinese law too. So if the Chinese says, we want access to the data of Americans, you really think Microsoft doesn't give it? Well, they're still active in China, so clearly they do. Let's be honest. Otherwise, they wouldn't be active in China anymore, because that's how it works. And this is true for any of these companies. Now, you can say, I trust my government, I trust the Americans, I trust maybe even the Chinese. But I'm sure there is some country in the world you don't trust, okay? There are plenty of them. So yeah, that's not good. So we need a decentralized solution, period. You need to be able to host it yourself, run it on your own infrastructure, and we're to the subject of this room, of course. Keep your stuff on your own infrastructure. Doesn't have to be every single person. It needs to be at least in your country. Now, if you're a German, find a German provider, or maybe just a European one. So at least the Chinese or the Russians or whoever, the Ugandese, whoever you're afraid of, can't get at it. And it's not just government, it's always, once the government gets at it, then so can criminal organizations in that country, if only by just forcing politicians or local police. Yeah. I mean, I gave a couple of other reasons, right? It needs to be secure, it needs to be open source, it needs to be easy to use. I'll skip this one. Well, this is an important point, I think. Backdoors are bad. We shouldn't have backdoors in software, because if you have a backdoor, then one party has access, but that one party will not be the only one. A backdoor cannot separate. I mean, your front door doesn't separate between the good and the bad guy coming in. Neither does a backdoor in software. It's just not possible. So our solution, the company I work for, or the community I'm active in, is Nextcloud. It's a private, self-hosted cloud. It's a replacement for essentially Office 365 or Google Apps. There are 200 apps, as I mentioned earlier. They're developed by our community and ecosystem. There is audio video talk app. There are mail app, calendar, contact, all kinds of stuff. You can run your own Nextcloud at home. It's completely open source. It's easy to use. It's relatively easy to deploy. Please keep in mind that running a server is hard. But if you run a server, then relatively speaking, Nextcloud is pretty easy to deploy and use. We spend a lot of time and effort on keeping it easy to use. And it scales very well. Our biggest customer has 25 million users. Our smallest customer 50, because we don't sell under that, and we do not in any way try to monetize home users, private users, and small businesses, because we think for them the product should be good enough to use for free. It's open source after all. And we spent actually quite a bit of effort on keeping it that way. It syncs your file. Again, Google Drive, Dropbox, it does all the things they do. There isn't really any feature gap there, so I'm not going to go for all the features. We do plenty of stuff they don't do, by the way. And the biggest part of that is our apps. I will skip security. I think I can easily say we're the most secure self-hosted cloud solution of file sync and share on the market. If you don't trust me, go to hackerone.com/Nextcloud. Look at how we deal with security. Then pick your other favorite project and just compare. If they don't have an HackerOne project or another bug bounty program, you're crazy for trusting them, because if they don't want to put their money where their mouth is, then seriously, don't trust them. Sorry, but I seriously think a bug bounty program is the minimum you need to do if you care about users' data. No offense to anyone, I'm sure. There are people who do a good job, but Yeah. Open source, tens of millions of users, and we're a big community, and I think we're at the end of my time. Seriously?
Thank you very much.
Right.